Every day, India produces mountains of waste. Food scraps, plastic bags, sacred flowers, bottles, rubber, ashes, cigarettes, metals, cardboard, textiles, and construction debris circulate through a vast network of collectors, traders, recyclers, startups, and factories. In the largest cities, this pressure is evident in landfills that grow like artificial hills, in neighborhoods where thousands of people survive by sorting materials by hand, and in markets where what one family discards can become raw material for another industry. The paradox is enormous. India faces one of the most complex waste crises on the planet, but at the same time, it has transformed into a gigantic laboratory for the circular economy. There, garbage doesn't always end up buried. Sometimes it returns transformed into products, energy, jobs, and businesses. India generates an immense amount of waste, not only because of its population, but also because of the speed at which its cities have grown. Rapid urbanization, mass consumption, the expansion of e-commerce, cheap packaging, street food, open-air markets, and the daily lives of hundreds of millions of households have created a constant flow of discarded materials. In many cities, formal infrastructure has not kept pace. Municipal trucks collect some of the waste, but a huge fraction continues to move through informal channels. This informal network is one of the keys to the Indian system. Before a bottle reaches a landfill, someone can collect it. Before a piece of metal rusts, someone can sell it by weight. Before a cardboard box falls apart in the rain, it can enter a chain of sorting, baling, transport, and resale. One of the clearest symbols of this model is Dharavi in Mumbai. Known worldwide for its density and economic activity, this neighborhood also functions as one of the country's major recycling centers. Plastic, paper, metals, rubber, leather, cardboard, and scrap metal arrive from all over the city to be sorted, cleaned, shredded, melted, or transformed. What one part of the city considers garbage, another considers inventory. Dharavi reveals an uncomfortable truth. The recycling industry wasn't born solely from modern environmental policies, but also from economic necessity. Thousands of people make a living by recovering value where others see only waste. In this system, every material has a hierarchy. Aluminum is worth more than mixed plastic. Copper is worth more than ordinary iron. Clean cardboard is worth more than cardboard contaminated with food. A clear bottle can be easier to sell than dark plastic. Recycling thus becomes a practical, street-level science, learned through experience, weight, color, texture, and demand. However, the human cost is high. In Delhi, a city that generates around 10,000 tons of waste a day, much of the garbage ends up in gigantic landfills. Sites like Palswa, Ghazipur, and Deonar have become artificial mountains where thousands of scavengers search for plastic, metal, and any material with resale value. Many earn barely a few hundred rupees a day while working amidst used needles, leachate, toxic dust, smoke, animals, broken glass, and flammable gases. The problem isn't buried beneath the surface. Organic waste produces methane as it decomposes. When that gas mixes with extreme heat, plastics, batteries, and other flammable materials, the landfill can become a smoldering fire. Fires in Indian garbage dumps have become increasingly frequent, and they don't just burn waste. They also destroy the air in nearby neighborhoods and destroy materials that many scavengers had accumulated for months as a precarious way of saving. Above all, a central contradiction emerges. India needs to reduce its reliance on landfills, yet millions of people depend economically on waste. Formal, automated, and safe recycling can improve efficiency, but it can also leave out workers who for decades sustained material recovery without sufficient recognition. Therefore, India's multi-billion-dollar waste industry is not just a story of technology, it is also a social story. The Indian government has launched nationwide urban cleanup campaigns, regulations against certain single-use plastics, and more modern management systems. But the scale of the challenge surpasses any single measure. Waste cannot be solved simply by banning a bag or cleaning a street. It requires separating waste at the source. improving collection, building treatment plants, formalizing recyclers, reducing unnecessary packaging, and creating markets capable of purchasing recovered materials. In this context, waste has become a strategic raw material. Every ton of recovered plastic reduces the pressure on oil used to manufacture new plastic. Every ton of organic matter converted into biogas prevents methane emissions and generates energy. Every agricultural waste product transformed into biodegradable packaging replaces petroleum-based products. Every flower recycled prevents pesticides and heavy metals from reaching rivers. For decades, disposable bags, bottles, and containers were symbols of convenience. They were lightweight, cheap, durable, and easy to produce. The problem began after use. A bag could be used for minutes and remain in the environment for decades. A bottle could hold water for hours and circulate as waste for years. In India, several companies began treating this plastic not as final waste, but as raw material for higher value products. A striking example is that of sneakers made from plastic bags, recycled bottles, and discarded rubber. The process begins with the collection of used bags. These are then washed in hot water, dried, and layered. Under pressure and heat, these layers fuse together to form a durable sheet that can be cut and used as the upper part of the shoe. Textiles made from recycled plastic bottles, canvas-like materials, and soles produced from shredded industrial rubber are added to this base. The result doesn't resemble the traditional image of waste. It's a sustainable fashion product, sold as a design object and not simply as recycled material. This represents one of the most significant changes in the market. Trash ceases to be something shameful and becomes a selling point. The model becomes more interesting when the cycle doesn't end with the purchase. Some brands allow customers to return their used sneakers for recycling, refurbishment, or donation. This approach attempts to break the classic pattern of production, consumption, and disposal. Instead of selling a product that will end up in another landfill, the company tries to keep it within a recovery circuit. Another waste product of enormous importance in India comes from agriculture. The country is one of the world's largest sugar producers, and sugarcane leaves a fibrous byproduct called bagasse. For a long time, this material was burned to produce energy in sugar mills or accumulated in large quantities. But its plant-based composition also makes it an ideal base for manufacturing biodegradable plates, bowls, and trays. Specialized companies process the bagasse to turn it into moldable pulp. First, it is cleaned, any overly fine fibers are removed, and it is treated with alkaline solutions to eliminate sticky sugarcane residue. Then, it is washed again, the pulp's texture is adjusted, and it is placed in molds. Under pressure, the water is forced out, and the plant fibers are compacted into the shape of disposable tableware. The result competes directly with plastic or foam plates. The difference is that bagasse comes from an agricultural waste product and can degrade much more effectively than petroleum-based products. This transformation makes clear economic sense. What was once a low-value byproduct can become a product line in demand in restaurants, events, food services, and homes seeking more sustainable alternatives. At the other end of Indian culture, a more unexpected waste product emerges: sacred flowers. Every day, millions of people bring flowers to temples as religious offerings. After the ritual, many are not thrown away because they retain spiritual value. Instead, they end up in rivers like the Ganges. The gesture carries a profound symbolic weight, but also an environmental impact. The flowers can carry pesticides, dyes, and heavy metals into waterways already strained by urban and industrial pollution. Some companies have found a culturally sensitive solution. Instead of treating these flowers as ordinary trash, they collect them from temples, separate them from threads, fabrics, plastics, and other pollutants, and use the petals to make incense. The process includes sun-drying, grinding, mixing with water and essential oils, kneading, and hand-rolling them around bamboo sticks. The unused stems and parts can be composted. This model has a special power because it doesn't contradict tradition, it transforms it. The flowers that previously ended up polluting the river return to the religious cycle as incense. The waste retains its symbolic value, but enters a production chain that generates employment, reduces pollution, and creates a commercial product. There are also invisible, small, and massive waste products, such as cigarette filters. Although many people perceive them as cotton, they are actually usually made of plastic fibers that take a long time to decompose. They also contain nicotine and toxic compounds. In some Indian cities, specialized companies collect millions of cigarette butts a month through networks of collectors. They then separate the residual tobacco, the outer paper, and the inner fiber. Each part has a different fate. The tobacco can be composted using certain processes. The paper is treated with organic binders and can be used in mosquito-repellent products. The more complex plastic fiber is disinfected, washed, shredded, and processed until it resembles a white, cotton-like mass. It is then used as stuffing for cushions, toys, keychains, and other objects. This example illustrates one of the most delicate frontiers of recycling. Not all waste is easy to recover. Some is contaminated, mixed with other materials, or laden with hazardous substances. Turning it into products requires sanitary control, precise separation, and safe processes. Innovation is not just about finding a creative use, but about ensuring that the new product does not simply move the problem from one place to another. Another notable example is the use of recovered carbon to manufacture tiles. In many areas, air pollution is linked to the use of solid fuels, industrial emissions, waste burning, and black carbon particles. Some companies have begun capturing or collecting carbon from industrial facilities and tire recycling plants to incorporate it into handcrafted cement tiles. The carbon is ground to a fine texture, mixed with water and cement, and poured into molds with decorative patterns. Depending on the proportion of carbon, the tile takes on shades ranging from light grey to deep black. Because it doesn't require high-temperature firing, the process can consume less energy than certain traditional materials. The result is a designer product that transforms a polluting particle into an architectural surface. Organic waste is one of the largest components of India's garbage. Fruit scraps, vegetable remains, cooked food, leaves, flowers, peels, and market waste decompose rapidly. When they end up in landfills, they generate foul odors, attract animals, contaminate waterways, and release methane, a particularly potent greenhouse gas. But when processed correctly, they can be converted into energy and fertilizer. One example is the Bowenpalli market in Hyderabad. There, tons of unsold fruit and vegetables are generated every day. In a traditional system, this waste would have been transported to a landfill. Instead, it is shredded, turned into an organic paste, and pumped into anaerobic digesters. Inside these oxygen-free tanks, specialized bacteria break down the organic matter and produce biogas, composed mainly of methane and carbon dioxide. This biogas is then stored and distributed for specific uses. It can fuel stoves, generate electricity for buildings, or illuminate areas of the market. The same waste that would have previously produced uncontrolled emissions is transformed into usable energy. Furthermore, the remaining solid waste can be transformed into compost for farmers. This creates a particularly efficient cycle. Farmers bring produce to market, the surplus fuels a biogas plant, and the compost is returned to the fields to improve the soil. This model is important because it tackles several problems simultaneously. It reduces the amount of waste sent to landfills, decreases methane emissions, generates local energy, avoids some fossil fuel use, and returns nutrients to agriculture. It also demonstrates that organic waste should not be mixed with plastic, glass, or metals. When properly separated, it has value. When poorly mixed, it becomes expensive, dirty, and difficult to recycle. The big question is whether these models can scale in such a large country. India has thousands of markets, millions of restaurants, countless temples, vast rural areas, and extremely dense cities. Each waste source has its own logic. A vegetable market produces relatively clean organic matter. A residential neighborhood produces more complex mixtures. A temple produces flowers with cultural value. An industrial zone produces waste that requires technical treatment. A landfill accumulates materials too mixed to be easily recovered. The solution, therefore, cannot be a single technology. India needs many technologies simultaneously: anaerobic digesters for organic waste, composting plants for plant remains, and mechanical recycling for recoverable plastics. Biodegradable alternatives to single-use packaging. deposit return schemes for higher value products, formalization of waste collection services, household education on waste separation, regulations that require companies to take responsibility for their packaging. The growth of India's multi-billion-dollar waste industry depends on this combination. Waste only becomes profitable when the system reduces uncertainty. A bagasse plate factory needs a steady supply of raw materials. A recycled shoe company needs clean plastic and readily available rubber. A biogas plant needs organic waste without excessive contamination. An incense brand needs flowers harvested before they rot. The circular economy requires punctuality, volume, and quality. That's why the future of Indian recycling is tied to organization. The creativity already exists. The need does too. What's lacking in many areas is safe infrastructure, traceability, decent working conditions, and source separation. Without these, the industry can grow, but it will continue to rely on workers exposed to extreme risks. The role of informal waste pickers will be crucial. For years, they were the front line of Indian recycling. They separated materials before the government or corporations even saw them as resources. Ignoring them would be unfair and inefficient. Integrating them into cooperatives, municipal systems, formal contracts, and protection programs can improve both the recovery of materials and the lives of those who sustain that recovery. India's waste also forces us to rethink consumption. Recycling is necessary, but not sufficient. If more packaging, more plastics, more disposable textiles, and more short-lived products are produced each year, the recycling industry will always be playing catch-up. The circular economy begins before the bin. It starts with packaging design, the choice of materials, a product's lifespan, its repairability, and the ease of separating it at the end of its useful life. In India, this conversation becomes especially urgent because scale amplifies everything. A small change in habits among a population of over 1.4 billion people can mean millions of tons less waste. A technology implemented in hundreds of markets can convert organic waste into energy for entire neighborhoods. A packaging regulation can disrupt entire supply chains. A company that transforms waste into useful products can grow to create thousands of jobs. India's multi-billion-dollar waste industry is, at its core, a response to immense pressure. Landfills demonstrate the failure of the linear model. Startups, workshops, and recycling plants demonstrate the possibility of an alternative model. A constant tension exists between these two worlds. On one side, mountains of waste burn, pollute, and cause illness. On the other, recovered materials return as shoes, plates, incense, energy, tiles, fertilizer, and everyday objects.